live. And I think we're going to be okay this time.
Awesome.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Carol. I am a librarian here at Tulare Public Library, and I'm so excited for this very special virtual field trip to the Tulare Historical Museum. At this time, this is a special window into the museum because they are still closed due to COVID restrictions. And we're here with Emily Engelsgaard. She is an executive assistant at the museum, and she's going to fill us in on what's going on over there. So take it away, Emily.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you, Carol, and to take you all on this trip through our virtual exhibit. Our rotating exhibit room rotates every 2 months. And for the months of April and May, we did an exhibit on Wilma Elizabeth McDaniel, who, if anybody knows who she is Tulare's Poet Laureate. She lived in Tulare. She was a great poet. She wrote several poetry books, many of which that we have for sale in our gift shop. And she actually came to Tulare during the Dust Bowl era. And so a lot of her prose focuses in on that era. So I decided to put together an exhibit of her work as well as artifacts that we have from that era. So I'll go ahead and play our virtual exhibit video for you here. So the Dust Bowl era brought a lot of people to California, mainly for jobs, as California had very rich agriculture, as we still do here. People traveled here. The numbers were even greater than during the gold rush, and it completely changed our culture and politics. And like I said, Wilma Elizabeth McDaniel came here in 1936 with her family, as they were also affected by the Dust Bowl. And she started writing as a child, but published over 50 books of poetry later in her life, a lot of having to do with Oklahoma and the Dust Bowl era. And the first things that we have on display here are some of her personal effects, a lot of which have to do with symbolically from her life, such as her teapot there. She loved to have afternoon tea as she was writing. She had a lovely bell collection, and these vases here were on her bookshelf. She also was an avid reader and loved collecting books, reading all sorts of books. You'll see here her famous sunglasses, which she always wore day or night. And any picture that you see of her, she'll be wearing those sunglasses. This plaque here was actually supposed to be mounted in front of our museum here. She was recognized as a literary landmark from the United for Libraries, and we were supposed to have a celebration in her honor last March. For this recognition, she's only one of very few women that have actually been recognized as a literary landmark in California, which is a great honor as for her and for Tulare. But unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to suspend that celebration. So that's why I decided to honor her instead this year with this lovely exhibit for her.
I'm so glad that you did that, Emily. Do you know if there are still going to be plans to display the plaque in front of the museum, or?
I don't know of any plans at the moment. I'm sure once we have a better sense of when we are going to open and get back to normal day-to-day business, we will revisit that celebration, because we were going to have a celebration in our courtyard. She was known as biscuits and gravy with beans kind of lady. We were going to have that kind of food, and we were going to have several guest speakers. So I for sure will imagine there will be a celebration coming up.
Well, just in case there isn't, I'm going to have some biscuits and beans in
There
honor
you go.
of
In
her
honor
being
of
a
Wilma.
literary landmark, because that's exciting.
Yeah. And these artifacts here, she was very religious, and she was very involved in her church. And you will also find that throughout her prose as well. These are some of the books that we currently have for sale in our gift shop, her poetry books. Her poetry is very hard to find for sale. So it's very lucky that we're able to have some of them for sale for anybody and everybody that wants to read her publications.
I can attest to that. I think it's very possible that we may be one of your customers soon, because I went looking for what we had on our shelves by Wilma Elizabeth McDaniel. And unfortunately, a couple of our books are missing. But the ones that I was able to find, we have two here at Tulare Public Library. And one of them is available for checkout. It's the red coffee can, Poems and Stories of the Unique Spirit of a San Joaquin Valley People. And then our genealogy department has a primer for Buford. And that one is available to look at in the genealogy department when they can open again, which again is hopefully soon. But both books are signed by Wilma Elizabeth McDaniel. So that's kind of a neat little thing.
Yeah. And then continuing on, we have some of her original manuscripts and other publications. Like I mentioned, she published over 50 poetry books, and we are only lucky enough to sell maybe 8 or 10 of them. So we have a wonderful archive here at the museum. So if anybody is more interested in her publications, her original manuscripts, correspondence, our archives room is open once we do open again, for anybody who wants to dive deeper into this wonderful lady and her beautiful prose here. Continuing on into more of the Dust Bowl era artifacts, agriculture has and always been an important industry to California, and many of the workers that came here came for farm working and harvesting citrus and cotton and stone fruit and anything that we have here. So here you'll see some 1930s citrus labels from the era. So I imagine that a lot of people came to work on our citrus farms. And then we have some Dairyman's Creamery milk bottle, as well as a creamery jug. People also came to work on the dairy farms as well. And then here we have some 1930s era tools, as well as a gas can. A lot of people that came from the Dust Bowl states came by car. So you can imagine them carrying gas cans on their back of their car and filling up.
I'm so glad you mentioned what that was, because I didn't know.
Yeah. And it doesn't have one of those cool gasoline labels. It's very obscure. It was very hard to find in our storage facility. And then we also pay due to John Steinbeck and the Grapes of Wrath, with a lovely excerpt there. John Steinbeck was very influenced by this Dust Bowl migratory to California, and that's what the Grapes of Wrath is actually based on, as well as his book In Dubious Battle, both of which are also for sale in our gift shop, as well as this middle book here, The Harvest Gypsies. It is a collection of his correspondence, newspaper articles, and writings on when he was writing The Grapes of Wrath. So that I feel like is a really cool prequel to reading The Grapes of Wrath.
Nice. Well, I just wanted to kind of throw out another nod to another area in California, which is in Salinas, where they actually have John Steinbeck Center. Talk about a literary landmark. They have an entire museum about John Steinbeck, and it's really well done. And I know it doesn't get a lot of business, so I'm hoping that they have fared okay during all of this, the COVID restrictions. But I just, if anyone's interested in that, that does exist out there in Salinas. It's not that far of a drive.
Definitely. And John Steinbeck is still being taught in schools, The Grapes of Wrath. And so I imagine that they'll still be getting lots of business from that.
Oh, yeah.
He's still
and
very well known.
Yeah, and it's really well done. So if you haven't been out there, I suggest it to anyone.
And then here we have some photographs from Tegus Ranch, one of the biggest ranches we had here in Tulare. You can see the vintage cars there, the migrant workers picking, harvesting, it looks like cotton right there. So you can imagine a lot of people came to Tulare to work on that ranch. Next up, we have a very lovely collection of Depression glass. And for those of you that don't know, Depression glass was mass produced between the 1920s up to 1940. And it was very cheap glass. There's a lot of imperfections. If you look at it, it not clear glass. Clear glass is a lot harder to make, therefore it's more expensive. So these different colors, the greens, the pinks, they were sold at the dime store. People would get them in cereal boxes, or thrown in with their other purchases. It was a cheap glassware and plates for people of the era that really couldn't afford it. But I think it's very beautiful, and it looks expensive to me now, and I'm sure it is. But back then it was, as cheap as buying a loaf of bread at the store.
Which seems so odd because it's beautiful. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can imagine here in Tulare, 1930s, you had a lot of different people, right? People from all over. Here we have some old tickets from the Blue Moon Dance Hall. If anybody out there remembers the Blue Moon Pool Center, they had a dance hall as well. Just kind of fun things to do during that time. We're going through the Depression. There's a lot of displaced people due to the Dust Bowl. But there was still a lot of happy times with music and the radio and dance halls. And here we have some of class pictures from 1939, Tulare High School. And down at the bottom, we have Tegus Ranch Elementary School. So if anybody recognizes anybody or yourself in these pictures, it just kind of brings that connection. And then here we have some children's books. I can imagine, children's, when they were packing up things to take with them from Oklahoma to California, packing all these books are small, and so they're easy to carry. And we have this, I think is really awesome, this Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs coloring book that a child colored in way back when. And we have a suitcase from the era as well. And easy things to carry. This waffle maker as well as iron are not electric. They were used just from heat. People didn't have the electrical ability, especially moving all the way over here. So they had to still be resourceful in the 1930s, caring for their family.
I love those. Amazing.
Yeah. And this typewriter is absolutely beautiful. Typewriter from the 1930s, still using it to write correspondence to their families. And I can imagine John Steinbeck writing his book on a typewriter similar to this.
Mm-hmm.
And these next few items are amazing. This is a Maytag washer from the yes, it is.
Oh my
From
goodness.
the late 1920s. So people would have had this going into the 1930s. And it also has this wringer up here. So people would wash their clothes and then run their clothes through the wringer to wring out the water as they would hang it up on their clothesline to dry.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then this is actually one of the original Merit stoves from the late 1920s, early 1930s. And it's actually the first gas stove that we had here in Tulare. Wow. From a home not far from the museum. It was donated earlier this year, and I just had to put it in my exhibit. It's got the range, it's got the oven and the broiler at the bottom.
I'm so glad you were able to include that.
Yeah, and it's got that special connection to Tulare. Mm-hmm. And this is a laundriette washer. It doesn't have a wringer in it, so I describe it as like a salad spinner today. It's got that barrel, in that copper barrel, and it would spin the clothes, and that's how it would get the water out. So it doesn't have a wringer system in it. So it's like a laundry salad spinner.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you would hang your clothes up to dry. This beautiful quilt here is from the Wilma McDaniel collection, as well as her shawl there. This quilt was quilted in 1937, as you can see from the embroidery on the corner. Mm-hmm. And it was something that she brought with her when they came well, I guess they would have made it here in California. They came in 1936, and it's so beautiful and just a pure testament to that era and this lovely, lovely woman.
I agree. I absolutely love that quilt. It's amazing. This was such a special tour, Emily. I really enjoyed it. And
thank you so much for having me. I am glad that we are still able to find unique ways to connect to the public.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So you can end your screen share if you want to. Mm-hmm. We're going to kind of wrap things up here, but I just want to say this was so meaningful to us. We look forward to hopefully partnering with you for other events. I know at this time the museum is still closed, so for patrons who are looking forward to when it opens again, how will they find out about that when you do reopen?
We will be posting on our social medias. We post very actively. So when we do have a date in mind that we will be reopening, we will send it out. We are on Facebook as well as Instagram at Tulare History. You can also find us on our website, tularehistoricalmuseum.org. Where we also will be keeping people up to date. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you would just email info@tularehistoricalmuseum.org. We do send out quarterly newsletters, and that will also keep people up to date to anything and everything museum related.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, this has been such a joy, and I can't wait to come by the museum and see some of these things in person when you do open up again. So
yeah, we are eagerly waiting to welcome people back into the museum and bring some life back in and share all that we have to offer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And